chat. We're going to talk about how to close sales when you're not the cheapest. I always tell our guys, if you can't be the cheapest, you might as well be the most expensive. And one thing that you will notice about your sales process is that it controls a handful of things. It controls your average transaction size. It controls the charge rate that you can get, and it controls also controls your closing rate. Most people think it just controls the closing rates, but it controls all these things. And when you're going after big ticket sales, you have to be remarkably persuasive. It's not just about price, and your opinion does not matter. The first thing that I'd recommend, and I'll give you just a handful of tips, is number one, you have to think like the client. You have to think like the client. Your opinion doesn't matter because you don't tell yourself yes. The client is the person who tells you yes or no. And when you're selling big ticket items, you have to remember you're selling something that is the size of a middle class divorce. It is the size of cosmetic surgery. It is the size of a new used car. It's just remarkably expensive. And it can't be sold like a can of beans on Amazon. Further, you have to remember that these people don't trust you. If you think about situations that you've had with contractors, half the time it's a bad experience. And so these individuals you're trying to sell to have been lied to by contractors so frequently that they no longer trust you. Okay, so that is the whole framework. And further, there are things that the client is really concerned about that they're never going to talk to you about. One of them is personal safety, theft in the home, sexual assault. They're worried about people being around their pets and their kids. Will there be swearing? Will there be cursing? And then you finally get into the stuff that they'll actually occasionally talk to you about, and that is like, will you leave a mess? Will you show up on time? Will you keep my home from being destroyed? So if your sales process does not directly address all of these things in multiple ways, you're in trouble, okay? So that's number one, think like the client. It's a big sale, it's a big deal, and for them it's high risk, and it is in a profession that they do not trust. So when you walk in the door, petting the dog and talking about the bowling trophy and emailing an estimate's not going to close these big jobs. A few metrics that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at closing big ticket sales, and these are a few that I'd ask you to track yourself. Number one, track the size of your average job sold. Most people do that, but also track the size of your average job lost. Okay? If there's a big, huge gap between your average size of a job sold and your average size of a job lost, if there's a big, huge gap, that means that your sales process is not very persuasive. Those things should be smaller. Another metric that I want you to look at is your percentage of on-site closes. Okay? So of all the jobs that you close, what percentage of those jobs are actually closing initially, meaning they're closing right there. And if you have not given people enough, information, and if you're not persuasive enough, and if you don't have third-party proof, people can't say yes to big jobs on site right then, right there. I've talked to my members over and over again. Hey, I just signed a $15,000, a $20,000, a $30,000 job on my first call. And that's how you know that you've really got big ticket sales processes put in place, okay? So far we've talked about you got to think like the client. The second thing we talked about are some metrics you need to track. Now I'm going to give you just a handful of suggestions. Number one, think about the experience from the client's perspective. So the way I break it up is chronologically. So you've got pre-positioning. That's everything that happens before you arrive. How can we make that real persuasive, real impactful, do things that are unique, make the experience completely different? How can we set ourselves apart, educate the client? How can we differentiate ourselves from the competition? How can we not waste that time? Then you have presenting. And that is everything that happens while you're with the client. And then you have post positioning, which is what you do while you're with the client if the client has not said yes. Okay? And then you have follow up. Well, if you've closed on site, you don't really need post positioning and you don't really need follow up, but if they haven't said yes, you will. So think about those 4 stages: pre positioning, presenting, post positioning, and follow up. Now, if this describes your sales process, you're in trouble. Okay? Uh, we'll walk through the client's experience. Phone rings, sometimes it's answered, sometimes it isn't. 65% of calls that go to voicemail are abandoned. You gather really routine information on the phone, like who are you, when do you want it done, what's your address, when do you want me to be there, and that's about it. And if you do anything persuasive, it's very inconsistent. You show up, you pet the dog, you talk about the bowling trophies, you walk around, you look at stuff, you talk about cracks, and we're going to sand this, putty that, try to make some small talk and some connection, and then you say, well, let me email you a PDF estimate. You email them a PDF estimate. You might call once or twice. You might email once or twice. This happens for about a week and a half, and then you're done. That is like 95% of sales processes for most contractors. It does not work. It's not effective. That is the same sales process that would be used by someone who is painting illegally or unlicensed or somebody who just rolled off a prison cot. Everybody's process is going to look the same. And if your process looks like that, and it looks like that to the client, it's hard for them to make those big ticket decisions because you're making them make that decision in an information vacuum. So we've talked about like pre-positioning, presenting, post-positioning, follow-up, thinking about it in segments. We've also talked about the typical sales process. I recommend you don't do that. We talked about some metrics and then thinking like the client. So here at the end, I'm just going to give you some concrete suggestions during this fireside chat. Number one, everything needs to be third-party proof. Let me explain. I'll give you 3 suggestions. I can't tell you everything about sales in this quick little talk. So, third-party proof. Things that you tell people verbally as a contractor, they do not believe. Should you say it? Yes, absolutely. But you have to be referencing third-party proof that shows that what you're telling them is actually true, that you have a track record, that you have consistency in the way that you perform. For example, you can't tell them, we've got lots of testimonials. You need everyone that you've ever gotten. Customer satisfaction forms, printout of all your Google My Business reviews, all of them. We use a big, huge leave behind book. You want your written warranty, your guarantee, background checks, proof. Like if you were brought before a judge, and the judge says, we accuse you of running an unethical, dishonest painting business. Well, you couldn't say, well, Judge, I'm a pretty good guy. He's not going to buy that. He would ask you to show you proof, documentation, and you would pull out things that are similar to what I just said. And so if you're not employing that stuff before, during, and after the sale through various modes and mediums, then you're just wasting time, okay? Another tip that I will give you, I'm going to give you 3. The first one is evidence-based proof, what I call preponderance of proof strategy. The second thing I'm going to make you be aware of is in your communication with clients, you need to be using a multitude of tools and mediums. Surveys, frequently asked questions, social proof fact sheets, email, mail, phone, text message. You need to be using physical proof in person, digital proof at a distance, video, the written word, leave behind materials, presentations. Because one thing that makes a sales call far more persuasive, and especially depending on the type of person that you're dealing with, different people respond in sales to different methods and in marketing. Some people are more responsive by email, others text, others phone, others in person. Some people like to read it, some people like to watch it, some people like to hear it. You are not your client. You don't know what they like, and you don't know what they will respond to, nor would they ever tell you. And so the best thing you can do is to use it all. Use it all. And then here's my third and final tip. I could spend hours talking about this. And this is just something you can stop doing. Never, ever email an estimate for any reason. And if you do have to do it, it is better done as a video presentation via Zoom. If you're going to deliver something digitally, at least let there be some persuasive component to it. Email is not persuasive. It gets lost. For someone to share it with their spouse, they have to hunt and look for it. You should know that email is a terrible way to try to sell a big ticket sale, if for no other reason than this. When you send something to somebody via email, you have to call them usually and ask them if they got it. Why would you put something very important in a place where you're constantly having to ask people if they've even received it? It's not persuasive. If your kids were being held hostage at gunpoint, would you send an email? No. You'd want to do it in person. You'd want the negotiation to be in person, at least by phone. Would you email them? Hell no. When things are important and selling services is important, then those things need to be delivered face to face whenever possible. That alone, you'll see your close rate go up. And not only should you, it is delivering presentations in person going to make you a lot more money. The other issue is that it takes less time. Can you believe it? I'm not kidding you. It takes less time. When you email an estimate, you got to leave. You got to pack your laptop up. You got to remember what happened. You got to look at your notes. You got to get back in the zone. You got to kind of ignore distractions. When you go out in the car and do it, and you print that puppy out, it does need to be printed. You need physical, tangible collateral. An email, the client has to work to hunt it, to find it, and to share it. They have to work to do it. With a printed proposal, in person, analog, they have to work to get rid of it. You see the difference? Big difference. Easy to share, hard to miss. Do both. That's what my recommendation would be. So, to recap, in this first Old Uncle BS's fireside chat, to recap, number one, think about the client. Number two, take a close look at your average transaction size sold, average transaction size lost, and your on-site close rate. Make sure that you are using third-party proof. Try to think like the client. Break your sales process up into sections. And then finally, don't email your estimates. Ever, for any reasons. There's more that I could tell you, but we're out of time here. Guys, quick announcement, if you've made it this far, please do check out the 2023 Painting Profit Summit. It's our 7th annual event. You can go to paintersacademy.com. There's a big button on the top. You can't miss it, paintersacademy.com. If everything that I've told you today about the sales process is confusing, and you'd like to get some more information about what we do here at the Academy, I've got 2 things that you can do, maybe 3. Number one, go to Painters Academy, and instead of checking out Summit, we got some fantastic speakers there, by the way. This year it's going to be a great crowd. But go and get the 5 Keys report. There's 5 keys for finding success in any economy, and boy, are we in any economy right now, uncertain economy. Go there, download that guide. You can get it mailed, you can get it emailed, it's up to you. And then if you need help, if you'd just like to have a conversation with me where I go through and look at all your business systems, including your sales process, and give you done-for-you tools and advice, and surround yourself with a peer group of very successful painters, just email me, Brandon@paintersacademy.com. It's the easiest way to get me, Brandon@paintersacademy.com, or you can call the office, 423-800-0520, 423-800 0520. I think that's right. If not, look on the website. Guys, love you. Take care. Hope you're doing all right. Have a good weekend. Cheers. See you next time.